Sagali ani, Michelle Niungits, Hogwali Niwagit Delota, Anya Tahaga Niwagit Hunjoda. Hi, my name is Michelle Kennedy, and I am the project coordinator for the film you're about to watch, which is called Tabikigizis, Kinamegwin. I am currently in Robinson Huron Treaty Territory in Nisquaquoc. The film shares the experiences of 7 survivors who were part of colonial systems which are known as the 60 Scoop, residential schools, and Indian day schools. The survivors are Algonquin, Anishinaabe, Cree, and Haudenosaunee. The interviews were filmed by Indigenous youth in both Ontario and Canada on the traditional territories of the Algonquin, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Chippewa, and Wendat peoples.
My name is Turtle Clan. I'm originally from the Kunkum First Nation, and I'm Anishinaabe. I'm not just a savage, I'm not just a squaw, I'm not just a bitch, I'm not just a stupid dude or any of these things. Those are the things that I grew up being labeled with. And the first time I went to school, we didn't know it was even day school. We just grew out there, and the nuns were there, and they were the ones that ran the schools at that time. Sometimes we were in portables because the school was too small. Nobody ever told us there was white people. I didn't know anybody white until the moment I went to school. And these ones were really, really scary because they had those black robes on and they had this kind of thing that stuff over their face. And it just, it was like, you didn't for sure as a child, because you never experienced this kind of person or thing. We didn't know what they were. We just, and they had these massive yardsticks rollers that they used to whack us with. And those are the things they used to hit us on the head and across the arms here. And even lining up at recess time, they would grab you by the hand if you weren't understanding to line up. That's something we never did as Anishinaabe kids. But we had to be in perfect line. And if you were off a little, it was just like you got grabbed and pushed right into line and by your arms, and there were bruises on your arms from their finger marks. That way each other. So no problem, fear-based. Well, some of the memories of that school was that introduction to punishment, being punished severely for not understanding that English language. People respond to kindness and love. And well, for me, it was people that came after me that were non-native to come in and bring their way of colonial thinking to curing the children that were battered. In residential school, I think our children had no source of outlet to be able to feel safe, to feel secure, because they were there, complete in that building with the horrors and the traumas that they had to go through at the hands of these people that were civilized.
You feel like this is why some of the issues in our communities, where they stem from, is residential school?
Definitely. All the stuff that happened to us is the direct result of that colonization process. When I was a little girl, I was always questioning in my mind and talking to that one star up in the sky world at night. Really dark sometimes out there, and I would stand on top of the hill by this tree and look up at the stars, I would cry and talk to the stars. You know, this one just always, you could probably say it was very, very bright and very shiny. And it just sparkled like it was dancing up there for me, listening to it. I would, with that constant prayer to that star and that world, I believe that's all I got to me when I'm able to sit there without shame and guilt. I don't have to carry what that other human being did to me as my own. That's theirs. I think what I would like to say to the little children, leave your little friends that are not visible to others, because they are the spirits that are coming to play with you. To little teenagers, go ahead and do all the things that you need to do before you grow up without fear. That's a time for you to be able to navigate what feels right for you. The men and the women, I would say, learn to be patient and understanding and loving to those ones. Love them.
My English name is Elaine. My married name is Elaine Kinamegwin. My name's been changed about 5 times. I was raised in child welfare, and then I was adopted out. So we're known as 60 scoop survivors. So originally the name that my mother gave me, my biological mother, was Elaine Bernice McDermott. But because of the systems changing your names, and it could be like someone made a mistake. But I like the name Elaine Kinamegwin. Because when I was being raised in all those homes, one of my wishes was to have the most Indian name when I grew up. So I married it. So I'm really happy to carry the name Elaine Kinamegwin. And it means, Kinamegwin means the one who carries the vessel well. Over here in Ontario, you call us OG Creek, but back home I'm the Chip Creek. I wasn't raised with my father. I wasn't really raised with my mom. I wasn't raised within community. We were raised out. Our family, from my grandpa and my grandma's side, we were relocated 4 times. You know, but I look forward to my dreams because we speak a lot of Cree in my dreams. And I'm speaking without fear. So a lot of it is picking ceremonies, feeding, planting, singing songs, hand drumming, ceremonial songs, and understanding there's a difference between public songs, the ceremony songs, to songs that come to you. Like I was taught some really not so great things during the 70s and leftovers of the 50s and 60s to the 70s that kind of graduated into the 80s, and you know, like some of it was messed up and it was rude and it was hostile and it was racist and it was homophobic, and like, so a lot of the ceremonies I do go to are very open. I don't know, you're always recovering from something. Recovering from foster care, recovering from apprehension, recovering from traumatic loss, like, you know, recovering from alcohol, recovering from drugs, recovering from homelessness. You know, yeah, all those things happen, but I think I've been healing since the day I was born. Because we were born into a grief time. We weren't born at, you know, teepees and on the land, or right? We were born into Indian Act. We were born into the, because I was raised English, right? And when I say English, it's like suburbs, only white people around me. 60 Scoop, a lot of us were raised out so far that we couldn't even see our people. That's not blaming the families, but that's what they were told to do. We were told to be raised church, English, get a job, assimilate. School. And I've been to graveyards at residential schools. Like, I encourage every Canadian, what they call every Canadian, if you call yourself treaty, if you call yourself knowing to learn about this reconciliation, whatever this reconciliation means to you, go to the residential school. Actually acknowledge that there is grave sites at every school. And then go to the TB sanatoriums, go to the Indian hospitals, like go to the foster homes that where you sent us. And it's really important to not be angry at what people love. Like when we go to certain ceremonies, we cry because there's a movement in our emotions and our realism of we missed it so much. When we dance, I've seen this where my son and I, we will dance and people will come to us with tears in their eyes. And it makes me like, oh, we did something wrong, right? And they're like, no, I'm just so happy, right? And I was having that this weekend. I was crying at some points during the powwow. And people were like, are you okay? I'm fine, I'm just really happy to be here. Because we've missed this. I've missed this. And not everybody can be here. I was trying to always defend the sacred in my world.
Hello, my name's Pasqua Lightning. I'm from Musqueam, Alberta. On Plains, Cree, and Ojibwe, part of the Three Fires Confederacy. And this is my mother.
Honey, I'm Donna Lightning. I'm from Whitefish River First Nation, also called Wawaskiniga. It was so different because we dressed different, we talked different, and I always remember being on the school bus and looking at the kids walking on the cement sidewalks to school, and I look out there and I wonder, how does that feel? Like, how does that feel walking on the cement, the sidewalk, going to school? And I know we were different, we talked different, our accent was a little bit different, our clothes, of course, were different, our hair was different. It was a very different experience. It was very frightening too, because you showed up at grade 5 after you were on the reserve all that time going to school, and then you get there and you're like, you have to line up in rows, boys on this side, girls on this side, and I remember them putting my little sister into the boys' line because they cut her hair, and they said, no, I said, she's not a boy, and she's crying, and I said, she's a girl, and they put her back in the girls' line. They absolutely, it almost felt like they didn't know what to do with us when we were there. It was quite strange to be in such a formalized school like that, like boys this side and girls on this, and of course we were not wealthy or whatever, or had money to dress like the ones that were there. So it was quite different. Mostly handmade schools, handmade clothes. I had really one good teacher. His name was Mr. Punch, and he treated me really well. But the other ones, I think I was telling that story before, like, because I had a pen and I was clicking it like that, because, like, you know, it's like that. And then she says, "Don't you stop doing that? I'm gonna throw that down your throat." Stuff like that. And you're just so frightened by the violence. And that was Mrs. Campbell. She's still alive, but whatever. And there was things like one day, because all the girls always smelled pretty, like the Javanoshi girls, I doused myself with perfume. And they knew I was in the bathroom. I did.
I said, whose perfume?
It was probably grandma's. Anyways, because I wanted to smell pretty like that. But they were probably, I don't know what it was. But anyways, they started making fun of me. And like, because they said, "Did you see how she's?" And they knew I was there. And I just like sat frozen because I wanted to be like them. And because I have can't think eyes. This is kind of emotional, but anyways, I wanted to cut my eyes, like here, thinking my eyes were gonna get bigger all of a sudden, because they used to make fun of our eyes. My eyes were like their color, of course, but I actually wanted to cut the corner of my eye, thinking they were gonna get bigger all of a sudden. Of course, that didn't happen. I didn't do it, but I thought about it. Like anything to become like what they look like. It was really, really sad. I went through trying to become like, to fit in. What is sweetgrass? You know that that couple respects us, right? They treat us well, but they don't know what a round dance is. They don't know the most basic. It's like grade school all over again, because they don't know. They respect us, yes, but they don't know anything. They respect us as human beings, which is good, but they don't know anything about the small, and you know the typical white settlers, right? You know who I'm talking about. And they don't know what fancy dance is. They don't know about powwows. They don't know about ceremonies. They don't know anything about the most basic thing. And I think there's a lot of non-natives out there that don't know the most. So that breeds ignorance, and ignorance breeds racism, because they don't know. They say, oh yeah, you guys get well, you don't have to pay tax. Like there's just such a misunderstanding about the history. So and it's not, you know, if you look back at it, when you look back at their education, there was no curriculum in there to teach them. All they seen was this racist ideas, like not natives, they get everything for free. They're a bunch of drunks. You know, all that stereotypical things. Oh yeah, she's squatty. Oh yeah, she's this and that way. And it was really an education, because if you look back, all the books until recently, well, probably the last 10 years, all the curriculum, all the books were written by non-natives, talking about natives and how everything was. And it's just now, like recently, well, whatever, that natives are writing about natives.
So my name is Jason Nakiji. I'm originally from Madawaska, Ontario, the Muskego territory, and my mother was Jacqueline Wesley. She was from Moosonee, Ontario, and I am currently residing now at Sudbury, Ontario. So my mother there, Jackie Wesley, she did a day trip going from Cochrane, Ontario to Moosonee as just for a day trip, you know, with my mom, then like her mom, my grandmother, that they're just going and walking in town in Moosonee, that must have been time that my mother's time was coming. So then as they're just walking around the town in Moosonee, then out of nowhere, someone grabbed my mother. Then my mother went to Fort Albany to St. Anne Residential School. She was there for approximately 4 years. During my time, like I heard a few stories when my mom was there at residential school, that one time that she couldn't finish her meal the one time, and actually she puked, and unfortunately the next meal was that they gave her meal with the puke, so she had to eat it. She was abused. I remember one time that she was abused. She had to stand, like, I don't know, like in a certain pose that when she was punished, she had to be posed in a certain way, and so that affected her actually till the day that she died. So after residential school, my mother got taken. My grandmother, she was into like the drinking and the drugs, and at the time that my mother actually went to go see a nurse, and my mother has actually said something, to the health professional, and the health professional reported it to the authorities. Then that's when my mom got apprehended, and she went to foster care. And while she was taken away, she was actually sexually abused from a known family member. I guess she couldn't really cope with it, so she did a lot of drinking. And I was going for her reports, going through the 60s scoop, reading from after residential school that happened to my mother, being abused in the home, and apprehension, becoming awarded the crown. That when she was 16, she tried to commit suicide too, here in Sudbury actually. And
did you have good interactions with your mom, like when she was still here?
Well, it's a different relationship. I know my mom had the best intentions. She had a different upbringing than me. She tried to raise a different upbringing to me. Like my mother was taken away in the residential school. I wasn't. She tried her best to raise me and my brothers properly, but at the same time, having all that trauma and having all that bringing it home, couldn't cope, didn't know why it happened. Then I remember one time I was actually teaching history of residential school in the colonial and indigenous people, and she actually got a real education now. She knows what happened in the way she actually forgave.
So your grandmother spoke Cree fluently?
And my grandmother was a fluent speaker, and we spoke every now and then.
So the education system at residential school completely severed language transmission.
Yes, so
in only 2 generations.
Mm-hmm. And I do remember
in 1 generation, because now you're taking it back.
Yeah, I do remember another experience that my mother there. She was at residential school that she was speaking Cree. Was it Cree or French at the time? Like, what's going on here? Then the nun actually came down and speak that language here, and the nun actually called my mom Anigish, means a frog, and she was being tortured. We can also talk about residential schools and Indian day schools. You can talk about it, but still, there's lots of stigma, right? You can get over it, it happened a long time ago. But, I grew up, with the abuse too. And I remember one time, like, I was learning in grade 2 there, I was like 7. And then here I am learning about the religion class, drawing, about Jesus, that he was a carpenter. And I realized, why am I learning about Jesus? Jesus from another side of the world. It's not me at the time. We were called Indians at the time. And during that time, why am I learning about Jesus? I'm an Indian. I should be learning about Indian stuff. I'm still trying to tell proper history, and I still use that word, Indian. And people don't like that because we are called indigenous people. I'm like, I'll call myself indigenous if they change the Indian Act or rename it to the Indigenous Act, or that they get rid of the Indian Act as a whole. So I still use the word Indian because I still have my status card, it says I'm a registered Indian. She did want to write a book, and I was going to go to North Bay and try to get that story and I had every intention to go see her, try to get that story still. And fortunately she committed suicide before I hear that story. So in a way I can still tell her story with what I know.
Aha. Chichak Nishtikas, Wam Shigini Dodem, aka H. Neil Neg. I don't remember too much about the starting of school. It's not until I reached that certain big classroom. And I think I was either 6, maybe 7 years old, I think. Grade 1 or 2, I can't remember now which grade I was actually in when that was going on. But I met a teacher there that was not. I could say, I could still see him. I could still actually see that guy if I remember. I remember exactly what that classroom looked like. I remember where the chalkboards were. It was one in the front of us and one on the side of us. I can tell you who was in front of me and who was on the back and who was on the side. And he was not a very good man. And, when I think about it, when I used to think about that, sometimes it popped into my head. I could also see him. Like I said, he was a bald guy, black rimmed glasses, yelled a lot. But what really struck us on is that we would, how young people like us going to school, how we were treated by this man. It wasn't. It was something that we never experienced in our lives. Because we were laughing all the time, playing, talking our language. No matter where we saw each other, we always played. When we went to the school, we had to, because if we didn't go to school, we would probably be sent to residential school. And we were fortunate that way. I wouldn't say fortunate, but that's not a polite word to say at that time when all that was going on either. So. But for me, when this man, he got mad, he didn't use any conventional man. He used a 36-inch ruler on our hands. And our hands weren't very big, they were small. And yet we had to put our hands out. What he would do is that he would hit the hand twice in each hand if somebody made a mistake. If we didn't do what he wanted us to do. He would yell. And if we still, we were trying to get this done for him. It is not something that we ever faced as being yelled at like that. Not like that anyway. We got scolded. We got a pat in the butt. And but that was it. No more than that. And but this guy was, I think they were trained to do that to us. But that 36-inch ruler, when it came down, you could hear it through the classroom. I remember that one day at one of my friends sitting in front of me. He did something. I don't know what he did. We still don't know. Some of us are still alive. There's only about maybe 2 of us left. The boys, anyway. And then all of a sudden, he gets up and he comes down. And he ask the ones that were sitting around. He said, "Did you guys see what he did?" And we said, "No, we didn't see nothing." So he asked him, "I want to know what you did." He said, "I didn't do nothing." Then finally, next thing you know, we all stood up. Him, me, the guy beside me, and the guy in front. We had to stand up and put our hands in. He hit us. If we had known about our culture, I think it would have been a different story for us. I think it would have been a different story. If the newcomers had finally realized back then who actually we were, instead of treating us the way they did, and doing those things to the kids in the residential school. My brother said it best. He says, "You carry a Bible. You carry a Bible that teaches thou shalt not kill." That's what it says in that Bible. And yet, the ones who were trying to teach that those words were the ones who actually did it. And where's the justice for that? There's none. Mind you, they're finding them. Now when we try, if we had to learn our language, our culture. When I learned my culture, the 7 grandfather teachings, I wouldn't have been drunk all those years. Maybe I would have been a high priest of the Ojibwe nation. But again, like I said, my brother said it best. He said that. He said that to carry this book that tells us thou shalt not kill. They have the 10 Commandments. We have the 7 grandfather teachings that our people still follow. And, what's the difference between the two? I have to say, I hate to be honest. I'm going to be honest. Yeah, I have to. There's a lot of young people today that really don't pay attention to what the old folks say. Mm-hmm. And that's where I have to, I have to say that because that's what I think. That's what I see.
Yeah.
That's what I see. But there are others who will step up to the plate for you.
I grew up in Hunters Point, and I was born in 1944, and we lived on the Ostaboning River, and that's where it began. At home, our first language was the Algonquin language. My mother and father both spoke the language, so up until, I don't remember the age, but when we went to school, we were speaking English, but when we came home, it was always the language of home, meaning the Algonquin language. Well, it's a long story, but I'll try to be brief as I can. The Indian agent came to visit our mother, and I'm sure he must have came several times before he asked a question. He told him that we were going to be sent to residential school. I don't remember the conversation, but I think of it this way, like I think of my stepfather and my mother sitting at the table, and Indian agent sat there and told them, "We're going to send your children to residential school." You imagine how they felt. I think it must have been a very, very sad time for them. And they had no choice. They had no choice whatsoever. When I think of it today, I think back, because you're at the age, almost at the age, that I remember, that we were taken. And all I remember was taken from Hunters Point. We got on a boat and we came to Kipwa, and they put us on the train. And my mother and stepfather, I just feel the pain that they must have gone through, having to put the children on the train, send them to the unknown. And, I was thinking, I don't even think I thought at that time, because it was just all shock. We lived in this little world of crying and shock and wondering, where are they taking us? We had no clue. And they put us on the train up to go to Notre Dame to stay with my auntie for a while. And I'm sure, that it was painful for everybody at the time. And I spent most of my life crying, always crying, because of the sadness. And today, the effect of residential school for all of us across Canada is very, very painful memories. And, when you remember, that's when the hurt begins again, even though, I'm older now and living in, trying to make sense of it sometimes, but we'll never have the answer. All we can do is just be good to our family, our children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and that's what keeps me going today. I want a good life for them. I want what happened to us to never happen to children anymore, because it's very hurting. And with those babies being found, it triggers a lot of memories with what's happened in our time, because we were young. Oh, it took me a long time to find an answer within myself. I went through a lot of painful episodes in my life, and finally, I think around the age of maybe 44, I finally knew I had to do something to help myself, and that's whenever I began the journey of going inside and facing the heartache and pain that we suffered through residential school.
Have you seen a change in younger generations becoming more connected to land, community, and family in a healthy way?
Yes, Liam. I'm seeing changes occurring in the younger generation today. I see you going back to the land. They're fishing, and but the most important thing is to honor each day of life, and give thanksgiving for what we have, because our Mother the Earth gives us the life, and we have to remember to say miigwech every day to what we receive. And I see a lot of that happening today. There's ceremonies coming back, and language is coming back, and I'm really, really happy to see that.
When I went to school, I didn't feel too much. I didn't like it, because it was hurt when I was over there. A lot of things happened to me. I didn't like the nuts, the way he treated me. But it's so sad. It's hurt when I talk about it. I know I was the one that I wasn't sick. It was them. And they think right now that we're the people, we're the survivors that's sick. No, we're not. They're the one that gets sick. They should get more counseling than us after what they did to us. But slowly, I forgot. I wanted to forget what happened to me. But in a way, in my lifetime, after good school, and I pray. I just to talk to the trees to help me, to let good things, let good things behind me, what happened to me. We had a lot of meetings. There's people that came from Vancouver. A lot of people come and ask me to go meet them in the States. There's a lot of people that came see us here. So we start talking about the land, talking about what's going on with those native, and we've been talking about what they did to us in school. It doesn't change. Everything that they did, they can't separate. They don't see that it's all in there, what they did to us. There's no, they can't separate it. And today, what did I start? They come and ask me to work. Now what I'm doing is do the language, because we want to teach our kids to the group to talk back, to use their language and their knowledge. You want all that back. There's nobody that speak Indian, or all the elders that they speak, they all pass away them too. We know a lot about the stories, about what used to be going on. Never forget anything. And I want that to continue in everything that we have. And I don't want to forget, and I'm trying my best to work with the other people. I went to Ottawa about 4 days last Tuesday. Sunday I left, came back on Thursday. It's all that work, teaching the young guys. We work for leadership. This is what I was doing over there. They're teaching us, they think they're teaching us, but I know everything. I just listen to them, how they say it. It's kind of like a little bit too much of a white system in there, but they don't say no knowledge what you could tell them about this. But anyways, I understand right away, but I've never said anything. But only sometimes I just answer them the way I understand things.